Evening, I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of Monday, October 5th, 2020. Please rise for a prayer from Pastor Hank Rosso, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gathering here this evening. We thank you for that which binds us together, and that's our love for this community. Lord, we take so many things for granted, but as we focus on Watertown and the citizens here, we're so thankful for being blessed in a place like this. We're thankful for the services that are provided, our streets and the protection from our fire department and our medical staff and the paramedics. Lord, we thank you for the police that guard us throughout the hours of the day and the darkest times. We thank you for each one, Lord, who works together and makes us a pretty great place to live. God, I thank you for your word. It challenges us to work hard to stay in unity, and sometimes that's hard to do as we all have different visions. So we pray that even with the visions here, that there would be not division, but unity. We thank you for wisdom and insight. I thank you for the kindness and the grace that's offered by these council members who sacrifice their time and their talent, and they could be doing other things, Lord. So it's a wonderful thing that they could be here and serve us as well. I pray your blessing on each one here, and our mayor and each of the administration staff. We thank you for all these things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Kristen.
Albertson,
Here.
Bueller,
Here.
Hoyer,
Here.
Pauline, Lalum,
Here.
Manti, absent, Rademski,
Here.
Roby,
Here.
Billhauer,
Here.
Y.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. In case people haven't heard this, we have the sad news that former Mayor Gary Williams passed away on Saturday. And I don't know the details at this time, but I'd like to take a moment of silence in honor of former Mayor Gary Williams. All right, thank you. And now, item 5 is approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Have a motion by Lalum and a second by Hoyer. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 6 is the public comment period, and this is the time reserved for anyone who would like to make a public comment to step forward and do so. Please state your name into the microphone for the record before making your comment. And if your comment is related to an agenda item, please wait until that agenda item is taken up by the council. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on. And the next item is approval of the agenda. And before we do that, I would like to move item I, which is the ambulance service agreement, up after item A. So we'll do item A first so Troy can leave, and then we'll do item I. It's my suggestion. Is there a motion to approve as amended? Second. Motion by Holeen, second by Lalum. Any discussion? Councilman Y?
Mayor, I'd like to recuse myself from 8B and 8C.
Okay, noted. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item 8 is the regular agenda. Item A is presentation and acceptance of the 2019 audit from William Neal and Company, PC. So I do need a motion for the acceptance part. Got a motion by Lalum and a second by Billhauer. And I will ask the Finance Officer, Kristen Bobzien, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Troy with William Neal is in the audience, and he will actually be presenting the review of the 2019 audit to the council. So I'll let Troy take over, and then if there's any questions between him and myself, we can try to answer them.
Thank you.
Nope.
Oh, you are.
Now I am? Okay, sorry. Tough to hit a button, I guess, so. At the conclusion of the audit, we are required to communicate to the governing body, information related to our audit. This communication is outlined in the letter, that was addressed to both the city council and the utility board, and I believe that each of you received a copy of it in your packet. There were no new accounting policies adopted or changes in existing policies during the year. We had some uncorrected misstatements. Professional standards require us to accumulate all known and likely misstatements identified during the audit, other than those that are trivial, and communicate them to the appropriate level of management. The attached schedules are the audit difference evaluation forms, which are attached to that letter that you each have received. Summarize each of those that were identified during the audit. I'm not going to go through them, each of them, but if anybody has a question later, you can ask me now, or you can ask me later, or whatever you choose. Management has determined that the effects from these uncorrected misstatements are immaterial both individually and in the aggregate to the financial statements taken as a whole. There were some corrected misstatements. We are also required to communicate any material misstatements that were identified during our audit procedures and were corrected by management. Although there were a few adjusting and reclassifying entries made during the audit, the only material audit adjustment made by management was to properly record the loan to the developer of the project within the tax increment financing district number 10, which is listed in that letter under the corrected and uncorrected misstatements. Other audit findings and issues. There were no audit findings or issues that we considered significant and relevant to be included in the schedule of current audit findings, which is page 140 in the CAFR, or the audit report. There were some other things noted that we have communicated to management. Kristen, we've gone through them and stuff, which are things that we had noted during the audit, which we do not consider significant. We just visit with them and do anything we need to do with Kristen in the finance department. An unmodified opinion was issued on the financial statements for each opinion unit, which means it was a clean opinion. There were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies disclosed by our audit, and we did not disclose any non-compliance which was material to the financial statements. One big difference from last year is since the city didn't expend more than $750,000 in federal awards during the year, we were not required to perform a single audit, which means we didn't have to test compliance with any major programs. The audit report has been approved by the South Dakota Department of Legislative Audit, and also I believe it's been submitted to the GFOA for the certificate program. So, any questions?
Councilman Billhauer?
I guess I just want to emphasize a couple of words, and that's the fact that you're giving us a clean opinion, Troy, on our financial statements.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess I had a question for Kristen. I mean, you're the one that Troy was harassing off and on for several months. Any comments from your perspective about the audit?
No, I think the audit went well. We had a few different things that happened this year with our TIFs and stuff, but other than that, I think the audit was good.
That's good to hear. Anyone else? All right. Well, I appreciate going through our stuff with a fine-tooth comb and telling us that we have a clean report. So,
Yeah, I'd like to thank Kristen and the finance department for all their help too, so.
yeah. Well, we haven't taken action. I will ask for a vote here. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Troy.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is action regarding ambulance service protection proposals with the townships and villages in Cottington County. Potential council action regarding the remaining townships and villages that have not reached an agreement with Watertown Fire Rescue for the services. And I see that our fire chief and assistant chief, Chief Kranz and Assistant Chief Rowland are here, and they have a presentation to give, so I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. As Don's going to get this loaded, I'd just like to thank everybody for their time. It's been a pleasure working through this, and you know, we hope to answer everybody's questions here tonight.
What's that?
On Teams.
I did not share it. You want to share it? We good? Thanks. Okay, thanks, Mayor, and the rest of the council members. We'll kind of go through this quick here so we can get all these parties on their way this evening. Okay, just a little bit of history of our EMS that we currently provide. We've been providing ambulance protection for the county since 1950, as well as the city. Watertown Fire Rescue is a paid on-call 24-hour service, everybody can see. We provide ambulance coverage to the majority of Cottington County. We became Advanced Life Support, which is paramedics, in 1985. And as you can see, we provide protection for 14 townships and 4 villages within Cottington County. Again, when it comes to current funding aspects for Watertown Ambulance, we have a service protection area for the majority of Cottington County, like I said. We do get our revenue from basically our general city fund. And that consists of 68% sales tax, everybody, as well as 32% property tax from our Watertown residents. Again, we all support the city sales tax and as well as our county friends as well. They provide 68% of that revenue. But as you can see, 32% of these city general fund tax revenues come from property taxes that are paid by our city residents and not our county residents. Now I'm going to kind of take it and share a couple of the codified laws, and I'll let Fire Chief Kranz talk about those.
Thank you. The reason we put the first one up here, obviously, is fire protection contracts. This is a state law. Basically, what it states is every township, subdivision, village, any area of government body is required to provide fire protection to its citizens. So every township has to enter into an agreement with Watertown Fire Rescue in Cottington County or one of the other 4 fire departments within Cottington County. So that is required by law. So I just wanted to point that out. Go to the next slide, Don. So this is what we have for EMS. Obviously, EMS is funded a little bit different. We don't have backing across the state of South Dakota federally. There's no funding, there's no mandates or anything. Basically, this has been a concern in the state for a long time. A lot of ambulance services are struggling. They're all heavily subsidized. So they put laws in there for us to work together with townships and villages to come up with funding solutions to moving forward as EMS is getting so expensive. When we started this in 1950, obviously at what point it became really organized for the entire county, you know, I don't know for sure. I do know we got our first ambulance in 1940. We got a 1947 ambulance, and that was one cot and not much training. So we've made a lot of advancements in the past 70 years. So I just wanted to share that. So basically, that's our requirement, just working together as a community. I'm a Cottington County resident. I also am a city employee, and I'm also live in the city limits. So I consider myself a community, a Connington County member, and we all live in Connington County. So the next one is cities and villages. This is a law that any subdivision or city or village within our jurisdiction, our primary service area, we are allowed to work with them in the same fashion as we do at the townships, to work together to keep EMS as a whole within our community. So that's basically what we're trying to do, is take the model from the fire service, which requires us to provide protection, and just ease up on that and work together with our community to provide EMS service as we have in the past. So that's how we're looking at this funding, and we want to keep it in that manner. So.
Okay, I'll just kind of continue on with our service protection agreement. Watertown Fire Rescue's always provided EMS to our county, and of course, since 1950, that's happened, and as expected of us. You know, one thing I want to add is medical supplies for our ambulances increased drastically over the years, and we have 5 advanced life support ambulances, everybody, that we provide protection to the citizens, not only of our city, but our county as well. And interesting enough, the second penny sales tax is basically where we derive that $150,000. That's not even something that we're talking about when it comes to the overall operating budget of our ambulance budget. And every 2 years, it costs us well over $350,000 to buy an ambulance, plus ambulance equipment that goes with that. And again, the difference between a basic life support ambulance and advanced life support ambulance is twofold, everybody. We bring an emergency room on wheels to every scene that we go to. When it comes to the funding source, again, we're talking about that 32% property tax. And ultimately, when we talk about the funding aspect of our budget, 2020, it's $2.8 million for our ambulance budget, everybody. And of that revenue that we receive, it's $1.1 million in ambulance user fees. Those are the ambulance bills that we receive and the revenue that we receive from that intake to our ambulance budget. That leaves us about a $1.7 million deficit to the city of Watertown, and that becomes to the taxpayers of our community. And how we pay that is 68% of that $1.7 million comes from sales tax, and that's everybody that's paying that. And then that 32% comes from the property taxes of our citizens of our local city. And unfortunately, that does not come from our county residents. And that equates to about $580,000 that's put on the burden of the citizens of this community. So that's one area I want to touch on.
I just have one comment before Don moves on this slide. The 5 ALS ambulances that we do have currently, we have the same equipment, identical on all 5 of them. So if you're on the first ambulance out the door or the 5th, you have the same equipment and the same trained staff, paramedics that respond to each and every one. They're all set up the same.
And I just want to let you know, too, we had 2 cardiac arrests in the last 3 months outside of city limits. Both were saves. So I just wanted to add that was a pretty awesome thing that happened. It was 15 miles out of town, too. So, okay, one other thing I want to touch on is ambulance protection agreements. Is, you know, we talk about when it was implemented. Obviously, we said back in 1950s when we started this process. But as far as a timeline, I want to just kind of touch base on the timeline as far as when we started this process. Back in September of last year, we identified sending out a letter to our township folks and villages to let them know about our protection agreements that we'd like to enter into with them. We had a question and answer session with those back in September of 2019. We did have a number of townships that did show up at this meeting, and it was very engaging, and we were able to share some different thoughts on how we're providing this protection. We also got to share some of our ambulance equipment, as well as give them a tour of our facility and show them some of the things that we're doing right now. The chief and I also attended 4 board meetings at different city villages. Obviously, that's Florence, Henry, Wallace, and Cransburg, respectively, and shared some of the information when it comes to our ambulance protection agreements as well. In October 2019, we also met with Mayor Larson at Station 2 to discuss some of our findings of our budget. And at that point, when we talked about our budget, he was not interested to talk to us anymore about our budget, so the meeting did not take place after that. In October of 2019, we also approved our council of our MOUs and townships, so everybody was received those at the end of September and early October. So that's just kind of a little bit of the timeline. In February 2020, we did send out invoices to let them know that we were going to be taking payment in June of 2020. We also received more calls from Mayor Larson and others about the costs and doing these MOUs and not giving enough information. So Mayor Karen did send out a letter to, I believe, the mayor from Florence as well as the mayor of Henry in regards to some of that ambulance budget revenue back in April of this year.
It was to the town boards.
The town boards as well?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. In May of 2020, we fielded more calls on this, and we decided that we would continue to try to work with these folks as much as possible. In September of 2020, we reached out to Florence and Henry just to share them. We talked to some of the administrator folks there about the CARES Act and the possibility of using funding for the CARES Act to help pay for the protection costs as well. And then I believe in September of just this year as well, we sent out certified letters to determine the past due amounts. So anything to add on that, Doug?
Yeah, I do just have a couple. We did also, as working through this process, I've worked quite a bit with the townships and villages over the last couple months exactly. For the most part, the townships I've taken care of, I've reached out to them all by cell phone, and a lot of the questions they're having is just understanding, why now, why all of a sudden the service fee, and so we walked through it, explaining it. This is something that's always been a free service, and the cost keeps going up, and we just aren't able to continue to go down this way. So after visiting with them, they did have a lot of questions about that. And the other comment I would like to say about the townships. The remaining townships are I've talked to quite a few members of those. They are going to be meeting here in the near future when the farming season is wrapped up and stuff. And I've offered myself to come out to those township meetings and answer any questions they may have. And that's about it. They're just two things. They just didn't think they had enough information, and the fact that why are we starting to charge now when it's always been for free. So working through those with those folks, and the townships. The best way to communicate with the townships is by cell phone or by phone, and calling them because they don't meet as often and have their board meetings and stuff. So working with them wherever I can to make sure we can answer all their questions.
And again, this is a 5-year agreement from this year to 2024 with no increase at all during that time frame. Here's just a kind of a service area map. We do not serve protection up in this area. This is South Shore Ambulance District. This is for German Township, Elmira, and Waverly, respectively. And at this time, South Shore Ambulance is taking care of that area. We do assist with them routinely on most calls as well. They're a volunteer agency, and they're very seldom are able to meet the needs during the daytime, but we're there for them whenever they need to contact us. The 4 townships that we're currently working with right now are Eden, Phipps, Henry Township, and I believe Graceland. They're in the process, like Doug said, of meeting in October to make that determination to come to an agreement. But we feel like we're getting pretty close with those folks. And then again, Henry Village and Florence Village are still the remaining ones. Just a side note, I know most people would probably want to know how we came up with the determination of the fee structure. And the fee structure for the townships were 0 to 100 population was $500. 101 to 200 population was $750. 200 population above was $1,000. So that was on the townships. The villages were 0 to 100 was 500. 101 to 200 was 750. 201 to 300 was 1,500. Anything above 300 was considered $2,500. So we wanted to be very the same and uniform in that area. Again, when it comes to ambulance protection, what is the requirements? There really is no requirements other than what Doug talked about in those codified laws. We're not required to provide service as well. So we want to make sure that people understand that in that regard. Again, we've done it for 70 years, and all we want to do is simply show the importance as a town and as a city that we unify as much as possible to provide these services. Anything else to add on that, Doug? Okay, so this is kind of where we're at for costs. We want to end it here. Total cost that we have for our 14 townships and 4 villages is right at $17,000. We, again, like I told you, we cover 585 square miles. Population base outside of city limits is 4,955 people. We did a little math, that comes out to $3.40 per county resident. So with that, that's kind of the end of our presentation, Mayor. So
I would just like to say one comment. We just, our job is to make sure we show the value in the $3.40 per resident, to show the value that they're getting. Basically an advanced life support ambulance with full-time paramedics ready to roll their direction. So with a lot of equipment in us to assist us within the county mapping, and a lot of different things that really helps us do our job and perform a good quality service. So.
Okay, thank you. And we have a couple mayors in the audience. Mayor Callan from Florence and Mayor Larson from Henry are both here. And I'd like to give them the opportunity to speak. Mayor Callan, would you like to speak?
Let me start out by saying that I have no problems paying for service that I get. If you guys come out and save my butt, I'll pay. That's not a problem. But this was all done with no input from the towns or the villages. And that $3.40 per person comes out to $6.68 per person in Florence. $2,500 from Florence is 23% of our yearly property tax income. It's the only income we have that we can base our allowances on. What I need to know is if we don't pay, will they still come out and serve us? We recognize that ambulance service is a necessity. I mean, we've got an assisted living out there, and those people will need it all the time. They're there for a reason. That's basically all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Mayor Larson?
Thank you for your time first and for having us here. I would like to take a few minutes to dispel some of the myths about the whole situation. Number one being that I hear all this talk about wanting to work with us, and you were at this meeting and that meeting. Well, the second meeting we had, I was told point blank at the front of the meeting, this is already a done deal, and that's just the way it is. So if that's their definition of working with us, then they can say that. It is not accurate, however. There's a lot of that going on, it seems like. This $3.40 average doesn't apply to Florence or Henry. It's well beyond that. So who's not getting charged that? The mayor talked about fairness, and if some people don't pay, it wouldn't be fair to the rest of them that do. So is it fair that some are only paying 40% of that while the rest of us are paying 160% or 200% of that? So all this talk about working together and fairness and all of that is just that talk. I would like to get down to some of the facts. The fact of the matter is no one to this date has demonstrated to us a deficit in the outside the city limit calls. I've been asking for over a year to get that information, and that has not been demonstrated yet. The fact is, the few numbers I have been able to get, there's 198 calls outside the city limits. I was told there's an average of $800 per call. That comes to $158,400. So that's $158,400 less receivables that the department would have if they weren't making the outside the city limit calls. The other myth is we don't pay any property tax. One of the board members in Florence owns 3 houses in Watertown. He's got rental properties there, and that rate is higher than your owner-occupied rate. Is somebody going to say he's not paying his fair share? How many people outside the city limits own businesses in Watertown, or rental properties, or income properties, or a lake cabin? None of this has been taken into account because the whole thing from the start has just been a decree passed down on us. The very first letter we have doesn't mention anything about asking us for our help or talking to us. It says, we will collect. So we were told from the start that we will collect, and then we were told it's already a done deal. That's just the way it is. There's been no cooperation, no discussion. Nobody bothered to find out or even ask the most basic questions. And somehow we're just supposed to accept this without ruffling our feathers, I guess. I don't know how else to say it other than it's just almost shameful the way this has been handed down and then misportrayed to the public. The public got reported it's $3.40. Well, that's not accurate. If you just use averages, that's how we come to this problem in the first place. The average cost, if our percentage is 7.4% for outside the city limit calls, doesn't reflect that almost all of those calls are going to be transports. So there's a whole lot of information that's not getting out there and a whole lot of disinformation that is getting out there. And that's why we're here today. I said from the get-go, I'm not willing to jeopardize the welfare of one resident in Henry for $1,500. It's never been about the money. It's been about the facts and the principle of the matter and not being able to get basic questions answered. And the most pertinent question that we need answered tonight, if we could, to be able to formulate a decision based on information and facts, would be, as I said, I'm not willing to jeopardize one person, but are you? I want to know tonight, via vote, are you telling us that you're going to deny potentially life-saving service if we don't pay extra? Because it is extra. We pay sales tax just like everybody else. In fact, this talk about subsidy is kind of maddening because we subsidize every department, program, project, payroll in Watertown that's funded in whole or in part with sales tax dollars, not just the ambulance service. There used to be a time, and you can look back through your records, when the city acknowledged that and actually showed appreciation and redispersed some of the tax revenues back to these communities. These very communities that are now being portrayed in the media as degenerates because we simply have questions that haven't been answered yet. We can't make a decision without all the pertinent information, and the most pertinent one I hope will get answered tonight. Are you going to deny the service if we don't pay extra? So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I did a little math here. Our deficit that we cover with property tax is $556,000. And in the entire county, city included, and outside the city, 27,000 people and change. That's actually a subsidy of $20.38 per person that the city of Watertown taxpayers are covering entirely. And so, from property tax. Depends on how you do the math. It is costing those of us who live here a lot more than $3.40. But it is also, you're right, I did the math on Florence. It's more than that. There's like $7 something per person. But inside the city limits, it's $20 a person. That we're, those of us who live in the town, are paying. So I guess my question would be, is it fair to ask for anything from the county? And I think it's fair, but maybe some people maybe you disagree. Maybe you think that we should be doing this out of our own, just like you said, because you're paying into our sales tax revenue and not receiving the same level of benefit from it that the residents of Watertown receive, because our police doesn't serve you, but that supports our police. But when you're in town shopping, our police is serving you. So I guess that's a question that the council has. And I really, we haven't talked about it yet, but I would be surprised if the council would want to discontinue service if you don't pay without knowing that you're going to get service. I think the question is, who will serve you? Do you have options? I mean, if you have options, I guess we'd like to know that. And nobody wants to leave you high and dry without service. So I guess I will open it for the council to ask questions if they have of anyone.
Mayor, I guess I'd like to have Chief Kranz and Don Rowland come back up and maybe address some of the comments that were made concerning the process.
Okay.
Thank you, I'd be happy to. So a little bit about some of the, first of all, I'll take the $3.40. If you take the math, 4,955 county residents divided by $17,000 is $3.40. They are correct. That's an average, okay? That's with everybody. So I believe all of them put together is it ranges between $2 and $7 roughly without looking back. But when you add them all together, it's $3.40 a resident. That's how we come up with that. And I think it's honestly it's a very fair way of looking at a service fee for these areas. So the next thing I would like to address is the fact that it's a done deal. This was approved by council in resolution, and we've already got 12 of the agencies signed in the organization. So I guess when this is all done, my question is, how is it going to be fair if someone just refuses to pay when everybody else is paying? So that would not work very well. It is not Watertown Fire Rescue's intention to stop service to anyone, 911 services. Okay, but we do have to work together, and we did contact both Florence and Henry on the CARES Act dollars that we believe would pay for these fees for the first year, and they didn't respond to that. We've made several phone calls out there, and we haven't heard a response. We've offered to come back to meetings in the future, and we haven't been invited back. So I mean, we really have tried to answer these questions that Mr. Larson and the mayor from Florence had. So with that being said, let's see, what was there one other question too? I do know that like I said, the townships were working with them, but the cities do qualify for the CARES Act. So and they're right. We don't want to discontinue service, but if they don't see the value in the small service fee, which is structured very similar to the fire protection fee, which I believe they're probably paying more than that for fire protection. But with that being said, we want to be fair, and I think this is a fair way of handling it for a city service to be providing county protection. I really think it's we all pay sales tax. We do. We support Watertown's economy, and the property tax, in general, is on the citizens of Watertown or those who own homes in Watertown. So I would agree with some of them, but I still think it's a fair equation. This is very common across the state of South Dakota. All EMS services are heavily subsidized from someone. Anybody involved in 911 services, there is none of them are making money. This isn't they're nonprofits. it's a tough game. A lot's changed. We haven't had any funding from higher up. Nobody, every time you talk about funding, nobody wants to talk about it. Okay, our costs go up, and we have to find ways to make ends meet and keep the gas in the tank. So we're there working with everybody, and we want to continue to provide service to everybody. We just want them to be realistic and really consider this. If they don't see that value, they do have options to find another ambulance service, and we'll make sure that they're not hanging without service. So, it's, any other questions?
I've got a couple questions for you, Chief. You touched on, but I guess I'd like to delve in a little bit more. Other communities in the state, there's got to be similarities out there where a larger community is providing service to smaller communities and surrounding townships. Is that a fair statement?
That is accurate. There's basically different types of services out there. First of all, there's county ran services, there's city ran services, there's not for profits, there's volunteer services which are not for profits as well, and there are paid services. They're all heavily subsidized in South Dakota. South Dakota did do a study about that. A lot of them are looking in the future over the next 10 years. A lot of them already have EMS districts set up, and that would be a mill levy that would go right to the resident, not the towns and villages. Okay, we did look down that avenue a number of years to go to look at that way. We've looked at other funding sources. We've actually visited with the county in the past on funding back in 2012, I believe, and now we're working off these similar to fire protection agreements.
Okay,
They are being done in other towns. I do know 2 towns similar to us are both have them in place. And
an arrangement similar to what?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Maybe it's not on topic, but I'll ask the question anyway. You obviously service, I mean, I'm looking at Hamlin County, Castlewood, for example. What kind of arrangement do we have or do you have with service provided in those areas?
That's a good question. So what we do is we have a mutual aid agreement, both with all of our surrounding smaller EMT services, including everybody around us. And what we'll do is do an ALS, Advanced Life Support Intercept, where we actually go out there when they have someone in chest pain or needs advanced life support and support those folks. And we actually have an MOU in place. We will provide the service together to step up care, and the ambulance bill, the patient only gets one bill, okay? And then in the agreement, it's spelled out the percentage of each service upon payment, who gets what or whatever. So we work together. We don't charge the smaller services a fee, and they don't charge us. We work together to provide service to the community. So that's in place, and we have quite a few.
That would be like South Shore Ambulance, that would be Clark Ambulance, Estelon Ambulance, Lake Norton Ambulance that we have those agreements with.
Other questions? Councilman Lallam?
You guys were talking about a fire protection agreement. That's a similar type of MOU? Is that what you're?
Yes, so in Connington County, we have 9 townships that we provide fire protection. They're all under contract as required by law. And the other 4 fire departments also have fire protection agreements in place with the other townships that they serve. So we serve more for EMS than we do fire. We serve 9 out of, is there 14 townships now?
There's
18.
17 townships in the county, and
Yeah.
we would serve 14 of those
9.
on EMS. But we serve
for
9
fire.
fire protection townships.
Only 9 then for that?
Yep.
Okay. Who are the other ambulance services that are available? I mean, you touched a few of them in our area.
Clark County.
Clark County would be along that line, and then
Does Castlewood have one, or
Yes, Castlewood as well. Yep,
are they volunteer as well?
volunteer.
And Clark is volunteer?
Well, there's some paid, and there's a kind of a combination, Doug.
yeah, I believe Clark is a county-owned service, and I do believe they're now paying EMTs to full-time, to be right at a station. And I believe they have some paramedics working, at least one working out of there right now. And so they also have Willow Lake down the road, and I believe that's all volunteer down there, so.
South Shore is volunteer as well?
Correct.
Yes.
And you said they're having more and more issues trying to staff that?
Well, I think what the problem is just they have a lot of folks that work in Watertown or other cities that aren't able to provide that protection during the day. So we provide the protection during the day and sometimes on weekends. If they do not have an ambulance to be able to be manned or staffed that evening or day, we'll go take that call for them up in South Shore routinely.
And I'd just like to make a comment on South Shore. We work well with them. We want them to succeed. We help them whichever way we can, because we can't do this on our own. We need their support along with all the other small services. The biggest concern is, like Don said, there a lot of, no matter if it's fire or EMS, a lot of the volunteers they work in town. A lot of them work in Watertown, and are unable to respond to those calls during the day. So, and then just in general, volunteering is getting tougher all the time.
I want to add that when Don said that we didn't want to work with him the night that he came to Station 2, when he sat down with us, Doug and I, the chief and I, first thing we brought up is that we're offering to talk about our budget, and he didn't want to talk about our budget. And he said, "Are you guys going to change?" I said, "Well, we're not going to change. We're going to show you what we have." And he didn't want to talk about it. And the meeting lasted less than 30 seconds to a minute.
Councilman Billhauer?
I guess I'd ask you guys, I mean, one of the county commissioners called us strong-armed. We were referred to as being heavy-handed. I'm saying we, you, I mean, that's us too. I guess looking back the last year, 14, 15 months, would you do anything differently as far as the process that you went through? Because I know we as a council voted unanimously to support the MOU when it came before us last year. But I guess looking back at your process, would you do anything differently as far as as far as what could have been done? I'm just asking that innocently, looking back now, if there's something you would have done differently.
Yeah. So once I would say yes. I learned that working with townships, mail is not the greatest answer. You just have to call them and stuff because they don't have many meetings, and one board member, who do you give it to? Their government works a little different than city and stuff. But so we probably would have started the process a little sooner. I would have probably reached out by cell phone and made sure they all were aware of it. So I probably would have started a little sooner than we did. And that probably would go the same for the cities as
And
well.
I just want to add too that when I went to Florence and did the presentation out there to the mayor from Florence and a couple of board members there, the presentation went really well, and it was very well received from those folks. Matter of fact, they were really close to just voting it in that specific night. And from my understanding, there were some problems financially, like the mayor alluded to. And from that point, it basically went downhill from that point, and we didn't hear much comment or got a lot of contact back with them. And I'd reach out to them, and we wouldn't get much support on it. So.
Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. If it's okay with you, I would ask for you to step aside for a moment. I see Mayor Larson had raised his hand that he wanted to make a comment, and I think that that's fair to the process.
First and foremost, nobody has refused to pay. We've simply said we need pertinent information to make that decision that we have not been given in over a year's time of process. Secondly, the second meeting that he's talking about, I had specific questions at the first meeting that Doug was not able to answer and said he would have the answers for me at the next one. And when I got there, they sat down and tried to present me with all the equipment information. That's what they were trying to present. They had no information on the specific questions that I had asked previously, and that's when I was told it's a done deal. So that's why it lasted 30 seconds. It's disingenuous to call a second meeting and say you'll have the answers that we had specifically asked in the first meeting and not have those, and not have intended on giving those answers. And those questions yet are unanswered. So it's a misdirection to say we refuse to pay, because I haven't heard anybody say that they refuse to pay. It's not about the payment, is what we've said. It's about the whole process and the facts. And the facts don't support your position. They're changing. The numbers change. They're revolving. The information given to the county commissioners have ambulance number 5 valued at $400,000. The presentation they gave to the town of Henry has a picture of the same ambulance, and the value on it at that meeting is $225,000. So the credibility for their numbers is pretty well gone if all you're going to do is use averages. That's why $340 per person is an average, but it's not accurate. So the averages on the average number of calls, the average cost, all of that, none of that is accurate specifically to our situation. That's why no one can demonstrate a deficit on the outside the city limit calls, because they've just been included in an average. And we're yet to be told if we don't pay, we're not going to do it. So who in their right mind, being fiscally responsible for their community, would decide to just pay if they didn't have that information? That just would not be responsible.
Mayor Larson, could you tell us what your questions are that you haven't had answered?
Can you demonstrate a deficit on the outside the city limit calls? And are you going to deny service to us if we don't pay? Those are just two basic questions, is all we wanted answered for over a year. I asked the city finance office questions, and she tried to invoke HIPAA laws on finances. So there's been red flags from the start of this until now. And that's what I'm talking about, the whole procedure and the principle and the idea that we're all in this together is exactly right. We pay.
Well, and I can say the first question, can we demonstrate a deficit on out of city limits calls? I'm not sure, I mean, I don't know the answer to that. And if it involves HIPAA information, then, we can't. But the second question about what are we going to do, that's what we're trying to figure out here.
Right.
We don't have an answer yet. We're trying to figure that out.
Right, but I've asked to get on the agenda more than once, and it's more than a year later. So I apologize for my frustration, but this has been ongoing for more than a year. And I think it shouldn't take that long. I think it should have been handled long ago. I think if it would have been handled in committee to start with, where all these questions and concerns could have been addressed, we wouldn't be in this situation. And
So, Mr. Larson, is it your stance that because you pay sales tax that you shouldn't have to pay the other fee? Is that where you're coming from on this?
I say we pay sales tax in, and it funds more than just the ambulance service. So it's not fair to say we don't pay our fair share of the ambulance service, because we pay for everything.
Sales tax is 68%, so there's still 32% that's not paid by sales tax.
Right, but we pay then whatever for the police department and the hockey rink and all the.
That could be said for anyone that's outside of our county and state, for that matter. Anyone that comes through.
The city did used to acknowledge our support of
When was
the
this?
community. That would be for you to research. Nobody does any
Herb
research
Jensen,
anymore.
1983, that one?
Is that when it was?
Yeah. So, yeah, don't just throw it out there that none of us research anything. We also pay sales tax when you go through Henry as well. There's plenty of people that come through it, so that's a two-way street as well. You can't just simply say that we're not.
And there's plenty of people that live
helping you.
outside the city limits that own properties in
Sure,
Watertown as well.
but they're paying
So
property
it's a
taxes at
two-way
that
street.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and that's
So
what you're disputing is the
We're
property
not
tax.
disputing that. What you're also saying is that because they own property here, that's good for everybody, correct?
No, I'm saying
Mr.
one person pays 3 times as much as somebody in Watertown.
Well, that's
'cause he
state law,
owns
though.
3 houses.
That's state law, that's not city law.
I know that. That's what I'm talking about. It's the principle. We're already all in this together.
But what you're talking about is non-owner occupied status, which is a higher rate. That's a state,
No.
that's a state funding when you don't live in the
That's-
property.
You're missing the whole point. The point is, nobody bothered to even wonder, is there people outside the city limits that are paying that? They said nobody is. Nobody outside the city limits. That's their presentation.
I don't think.
Mr. Larson, you said you had two questions. We're getting off topic with your dialogue with Adam. You said you had two questions. One is, can we show that we have a deficit in our rural ambulance service?
Right.
I believe very strongly that we do. I can't give you the numbers. I believe those two gentlemen back there can. That's one question. Second question is, what are we going to do if you don't pay? And that's what we're trying to decide tonight. So I think you're raising points that aren't fair to be asking because you said you had two questions that weren't answered. Correct?
Correct.
And if we get an answer to those two questions, or if you can answer those two questions, you said you're okay with paying as long as the process. It's the process that upsets you.
I said, then I have the pertinent information to make that decision.
No, you said, according to Brad Johnson's column, you said you've got no problem with the money. It's a process that you were
I
concerned
said,
about.
it's not about the money.
So again, I'm asking you, if we get those two questions answered, your issues go away.
If I get those two questions answered, I can present that information to the board and then we'll make a decision as a board. But it's my personal opinion that we would pay the $1,500 because it's not, I'm not gonna jeopardize somebody's life for $1,500.
Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. To Mayor Larson and Mayor, is it Colin? Callan, sorry, I apologize for that. I want to reach out, I just want to say I apologize if you guys have felt slighted, have felt that the process was rigged, or that you weren't getting due process. That was not our intent. The City of Watertown does cherish the relationship that we have with the towns in Cottington County, and I do believe that we are all part of this together. We might not agree on this one. In my mind, I'm doing what I think is fair for the citizens of Watertown that are paying for a full-time EMS service that other communities do get to access. So that is where my brain is at, and you know, good-natured people can disagree on certain items. I did want to address one thing, like you were part of your comments were saying that you felt slighted for like the last year. I want to make it clear, and when I talked with you on the phone, I made this clear as well. Any person can come to this council at the beginning and say anything they want to us. So if you felt that you had waited a year to get a chance to speak, that is not true. You could have prompted this faster by bringing this to us earlier. Now, you did reach out by phone calls, and I did respond because you said, I want a specific agenda item. And I said, let me see what I can do. And the mayor easily complied. And then also, when I then called you back saying, I've got an agenda item, you told me I can't make it that night. So then we also changed our agenda tonight to give you a chance to speak. So I hope that that is expressing to you that we are trying to listen to you. And I really do apologize because that was not our intent. But both tonight and in the newspaper, you use the term shameful and degenerate. To my knowledge, we have not ever called you or the community's names. We're just trying to do what I think is fair. So the name calling, I apologize if you felt that way, but as far as I know, we're not the ones saying it. So thank you.
Councilman Roby?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. I can't speak to the process with that because I wasn't necessarily involved, but I do want to make a couple points just on budget, what have you. About 2 years ago, we did our sales tax presentation downtown, and that highlighted the main point of that our costs are rising faster than our revenues. And that is certainly held true in the fire department in my term on the council. I wanted to point one other thing out, and this oftentimes goes unnoticed because on the consent agenda, a lot of times you'll see the ambulance write-offs. At our meeting back a couple meetings ago, we wrote off for the September, I believe it was, $10,542 in ambulance receivables. We wrote that off. And in talking with Kristen, our average, we're talking averages somewhere between $7,000 and $12,000 a month we write off on the ambulance costs. And, that's up over $100,000. And that does not include what we write off for Medicaid and Medicare, which is roughly the same amount. So the costs that we have been running into in this department are rising faster than our revenues, and we are writing a tremendous amount off every year. I just wanted to make those points. I think the question I have to ask as a councilman is what has been proposed or we've asked for, has it been reasonable and reasonable for all? And if you look at, I think, the service provided and the cost with which it's provided, it does seem reasonable to me, and that's why the vote went through. So I hope we can get away from the ultimatums and strong arm tactics and either, if we can agree it's reasonable or not. But I think, again, that our costs have gone up at such a higher rate that I believe that there is a level of reasonableness involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other council?
I just have a quick question.
Okay, Councilman Lalo.
Don, or do you know how many ambulance calls there were last year? I know you guys made a presentation. I could go back and find it. I just didn't know if you roughly top of your head.
The ambulance calls in general for
Fiscal year, yeah.
the fiscal year, we had 2,700 ambulance calls.
Okay. And we wrote off
700.
2,700 ambulance calls in 2019.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
Okay.
Gonna do some math? You want me to wait?
No, go ahead.
I'm not sure what his math is. I think there's lots of ways you can do the math. Any way you slice it, the city of Watertown residents are subsidizing service outside the city limits boundaries, and that's what it comes down to. Is we're looking for a little bit of buy-in, not proportional. If we did a proportional amount for folks outside the city limits, for the amount of property tax that goes in the subsidy to the ambulance, it would be about $100,000, and the other 400-something thousand would come from the residents, because it's roughly about 20% of the folks in the county that live outside the city limits of Watertown. So if you take the subsidy and divide it by 5, those are just real rough numbers. $100,000 would be paid, but we're only asking for 17. That's coming out of property tax. The rest of it, most of it's coming from sales tax, and we acknowledge everybody pays that. So, you done with your math?
Yeah. It was about $74.
So, what were you calculating?
I was just what we wrote off versus how many calls. I mean, we dropped $74 per call.
Every single call
Every
we
call.
make.
We write off $74 per every single one of them. That's real cheap math.
Yeah.
I think Don has a question.
Okay. Like Don Roby. Councilman Roby,
Yes?
your hand is up.
Oh, I'm delinquent. My apologies.
Okay. If there aren't any other comments, I know that the staff was looking for some leeway, and a suggested motion was listed in the packet to approve all townships and villages within the primary service area of Watertown Fire Rescue must sign the service agreement or seek 911 emergency medical services from another ambulance service no later than 5:00 p.m. on December 31st, 2020.
I will make that motion.
So we have that motion by Councilman Vilhauer. Is there a second? second by Councilman Holeen. And further discussion? Councilman Lallam?
If they do not sign that and they do not have other 911 services, what are the options? I mean, that's what we're really coming down nuts and bolts here, is what's the other options? Sorry to extend this longer. I want to look out for their people as well.
It's a fair question. I take it upon myself to work with the individuals left to really get this to the finish line. They do have options here. Obviously, they have an option to sign with us. They have an option to sign with someone else. If you're saying they decide not to sign with us or someone else, that's going to be a tough question, because I don't want to stop services. When someone calls 911 and they have a cardiac arrest, okay, a lot of the citizens don't even know what's going on with EMS, and they call 911, they call over to the police dispatch. An ambulance has to come from somewhere. You know, we can't have a black spot. So my proposal is to work with the individuals and keep the council updated, and maybe the first part of December we will see what is left, and then look for direction of maybe a meeting with the remainder individuals or organizations that are out there, to see if we can come over some hurdles. So my recommendation is to show them the value in our service. They do have options to go outside. They also have options for 1 year for the CARES Act. But regardless, if they don't see the value in our service, we'd like them to just look and see if they can get their service somewhere else. If they can't, I'd like to come to some sort of an agreement. I think in this day and age, we can work through these hurdles and with everybody.
Yeah, we can't leave a spot where there's no. I mean, whether it's an accident or anything that may be. I mean, these are farming communities, they're farming areas, especially. I mean, most of the townships are very rural. We don't want to have something where they're concerned about not having someone show up. Whether it's a cardiac arrest or an accident, I mean, there's plenty of anything else that's out there.
Exactly. We as I mentioned in the slide, the state, there's no requirement for anybody to provide service. We don't have to provide service. They don't have to accept it. But we are asked to work together, because there's no other funding sources out there, up and down the federal, the state, anywhere. South Dakota is asking EMS to work together as a community to try and make this work. So that's my full intention.
Thank you.
Councilman Bueller?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I have a question for you. Out of the 17 townships that we service, have we had issue? How many other townships have we had issue with in regards to how we communicate our fees to them?
Good question. As I said, the best way I was able to reach out to these townships is through several phone calls. I spent a lot of time on cell phones, so they've been very receptive. Once I got a hold of them, and they first of all had a lot of the same questions Don had, and I was able to talk through them and explain why, and I did get a lot of support. Those remaining townships haven't voted yet, but the ones that have already signed in, I believe the 12, a lot of them signed in without any dialogue at all, and then others reached out to us and were like, what's this about? We went through the process, and they fully understood the value in it. So it's been a good experience, and working with them. Like I said, if I could have done one thing better, it's been reaching out sooner. So that's my response.
Thank you. Councilman Rademski?
One of the questions I have, and this is for the mayor of Florence and the mayor of Henry there, are all your residents aware that this is going on? Do all your, when you guys have your town board meetings, your citizens show up? And are all the citizens informed as to that there is an ambulance issue going on right now, that they potentially could lose service?
It's been in the meeting minutes of people. I mean, it's a small town. It doesn't take much for a word to circulate.
Right, but I mean, you don't know for sure that they all do know about what's going on?
I don't know that, but it's been my point all along that we're not going to not pay $1,500.
Right, I understand that, but I just want to make sure that...
Other stuff is hyperbole about other services and all that. That's not what we're here for, that's not why tonight came about, so.
Yeah, I understand that, but I just want to make sure that all the residents are aware of what's going on, so you're getting all your input from your residents, as to what direction they want to take. Do they want to, sign the contract, or do they want to, potentially seek an outside service? Or I'm just making sure everybody is informed of this, so they're not
Right.
left in the dark on it.
I've heard both ways, so.
Could you come to the microphone so that we can hear? Thank you.
I've heard from both positions in town. One is, don't pay it, find another route, and the other one is, just pay it. So I told you where I'm at, what my opinion is. I can't make the decision for the board, however, so otherwise I would be happy to do it tonight. But I'm just letting you know that there's been misinformation, and that's what's gotten us to this point, and we're not disputing the value of it. There's no greater value than what you can place on human life, so nobody's saying there's not value there. We're just saying that it doesn't feel like we've been part of the process at all. And you mentioned that we could come to a meeting at any time, but everybody here knows that that's 3 minutes. Thank you for your comment. Next. There's no discussion, no action taken on that. That's why I requested to be on the agenda, not just at a public comment. We know that. Let's not kid ourselves. So that's just another thing when they say, well, you've been invited to meetings. That is true, but is disingenuous. Not that you were. You've been more than helpful. The whole council has to move the meeting or the agenda up so we can discuss this. So, in regards to your question, our town is not going to go unprotected one way or the other. So.
In response to your question about the people in Florence, we were at the last meeting in September. We decided we would send a letter out to all the people and have them make comments to us. Well, my finance officer came down with COVID, so that put a kibosh to it. She finally got it out. They're supposed to be giving us answers. My meeting starts in about a minute. But yes, we have sent it out, and I've had some people respond back, and the majority of them say, well, we need it. And yes, there's no disputing that. We definitely need it. And we're between a rock and a hard place. It's you or nothing.
What do you think a fair amount would be?
I'd have to talk to the board with that, but I'm thinking we could do 1,000, and that wouldn't cripple us. I mean, we have to take it from somewhere. Maybe $12.50, half of what they were asking for. I think I could convince them of that.
I think so we know what to do. Nobody wants to leave you high and dry, and you're saying you want our service, you can't afford it. Oh, I get that. And I know you've got a very limited budget, and you're scrapping just like we are, trying to do away with a deficit. I think that would be helpful to hear from your board that you felt that you want to move forward and that you'll offer this certain amount. And Florence is the highest.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's got the greatest population, but it is the highest amount that we put out there. So I think that's reasonable. I think that it shows that you recognize that it costs money, that when we go out to Florence with our service, it costs our community something to do that, and that you're willing to participate in the cost, understanding that we're picking up the tab you know, above and beyond the revenue that we get back. So I appreciate that very much, and I think I would like to hear from each of the boards that if they want the service, but they're unable to pay the amount that we're requesting, what is fair? What are they able to provide? And that would help us too. And I think the council will consider that very seriously. Because we don't want to put you in a hardship position. That was not the intent. Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. And we thank you for, you know, talking with us. I apologize that you're both going to be late for your meetings, and I know that, but I hope you appreciate that we did do the agenda item and moved it up, and we wanted to have this conversation, and I think it's been helpful. The mayor touched upon something I wanted to reiterate, which was we empathize with your budget constraints, but we are also facing our own on a very large scale. It's just a matter of scale, and that's what we're facing as well. Healthcare is expensive, but it's value that is worth it. It's a quality of life value, and therefore the city of Watertown pays it, subsidizes it, and writes it off. We wish that there was an alternative, just like you do. So it's not like we're trying to take advantage of you. We're just trying to do right by our citizens, just like you are for your own.
Thank you. Anyone else before we vote? All right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you, and we'll look forward to hearing what your board said.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is B, application for a new retail on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license to Wise Pizza LLC, doing business as Wise Pizza at 722 West Kemp Avenue, pending the Board of Adjustment conditional use approval on October 8th, 2020. Okay, well, Councilman Lala made the motion. You want to second it? Okay. And I will ask our finance officer, Kristen Bobzine, to brief us on this. Oh, yeah. Don's got his hand up. Sorry, just hang on there, Kristen. Councilman Roby?
Yes, thank you. I'll have to recuse myself from this issue and the other alcohol license issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kristen.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This one's pretty straightforward, just a new retail malt beverage and SD wine. The only thing that I will point out is this one would not be sent to the state for final approval until we get the pending Board of Adjustment conditional use permit issued. If there's any questions, I can try to answer them. Otherwise, that's it.
All right, thank you. Question, Councilman Vilhar?
Refresh my memory, there was this license in effect when the previous business was there, correct?
Yes, it was, and this has to go before the BOA because it was longer than a 12-month period where it had lapsed. It's been several years.
Okay.
So the BOA did approve it the last time it was requested with the previous landowner.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak?
If I could, Mayor.
You don't have to go in the public hearing.
I know. But we may want to just tell the
Okay.
public that Councilman Y is the one that's making the
Yes.
council agenda item, so.
Yes, this is Councilman Y's deal here. This is why he's recused. Thank you. Seeing no one for the public hearing, I will close the public hearing and see, is there any further council discussion before we take action? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item C is application for a temporary location transfer and return of a retail on-sale liquor license owned by Cloud9 Golf Course Incorporated, doing business as Cloud9 Golf Course Incorporated as follows. A, for the period of 4:00 p.m., October 10th, 2020 to 2 a.m., October 11th, 2020, from 625 20th Avenue Southeast to 716 Oakwood Road. I need a motion on that. I have a motion by Rademski and a second by Lallam. And Kristen, do you want to tell us about this one?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a temporary location transfer. The only thing that I will say is this one did go before the Board of Adjustment for approval, and everything checked out there, and it's for a private event. So that's
Okay,
it.
thank you. I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak about this item? If so, please state your name for the record. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and see if the council has any questions or comments. Councilman Lallam?
So Kristen, if you can refresh my memory, to use Glenn's, on something like that, if they move their liquor license, they're not allowed to sell liquor at their current establishment, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
So they would have to close that one to be able to sell liquor at the other one.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is that true? I thought. Councilman Roby, excuse me, Attorney Roby, you're appearing. Do you have something to say?
They wouldn't technically have to close. They just can't serve whatever license they're transferring temporarily. And it's always a liquor license. They can't serve liquor. And if they have another beer wine license attached to video lottery, which I suspect Cloud9 does, they can still serve beer and wine. They just can't serve liquor during that time frame.
Right, that's what I meant. I didn't mean they had to close the doors.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Councilman Vilhauer?
Not that I'm accusing anybody of doing this, but do we monitor that at all, that they are in effect shutting down that portion of their license for that time period? My guess is probably,
It's a rhetorical
probably not.
question since we.
Okay.
I think that if they were aware of it, and I know the police do regularly do patrols and check that kind of stuff out. So, any other discussion? Councilman?
I just had a question. Is it pertinent? I don't know, you said it's for a private function. Is it pertinent for the public to know what that private function is?
Is that part of the application, Kristen, as a public record?
You.
Or Matt?
Go ahead, Matt.
It was mentioned publicly. It's a wedding at that facility.
Okay, thank you. Heath, did you want to make a comment?
If I could quickly, just not necessarily for this particular case, but as an example, this is something Matt and I just recently spoke about in regards to the special event licenses that we also entertain for beer and wine consumption at any location throughout town approved by the council. The thing about this process now for liquor license transfers is we're having to do this special day conditional use and or rezone for property in town for the liquor license transfer. So if it were okay with the council, that's something that Matt and I could work together on because of the rezone issue. It's a little less than conventional to have to rezone something for a day or put a conditional use on something as a bar and tavern for a day, where we maybe have a better solution through the special event license to allow the liquor component to be plugged into that. I just wanted to mention that for conversation's sake tonight as well.
I think that's a great idea. Anyone else? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Now, this is going to sound redundant, but also need a motion on moving it back for the period after 2:00 a.m., October 11th, 2020, from 716 Oakwood Road to 625 20th Avenue Southeast.
So moved.
Have a motion by Lallam and a second by, Holeen, I think.
Yep.
And I'm going to open the public hearing, see if anyone's here to speak about this. So please come forward. See no one, I will close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion from the council, moving it back? All right, none. Then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item D is second reading of ordinance number 20-36, a zoning text amendment to chapter 21.28, C3 Highway Commercial District of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown. Motion by Vilhauer and a second by Helene. And I'll ask Public Works Director Heath Von Eye to introduce this topic.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is an amendment to Chapter 21, the zoning ordinances for the city of Watertown. This would amend Chapters 21.28 related to the C3 zoning district. That's the Highway Commercial District. And what it would do is add a conditional use of caretakers. Now, of course, all conditional uses have to go to the Board of Adjustment for approval. And a caretaker residence added to the C3 district for conditional use stems from what we already allow in the I-1 light industrial district. Caretakers residents are usually hand in hand with contractor shops, and contractor shops are also allowed by conditional use in the C3 district. They're also allowed in the I-1 district. I-1 district then further allows by conditional use a caretaker's residence. C3, however, does not. So that's essentially what this amendment would be doing, is making the C3 district uniform with the I-1 district, where the caretaker's residence would be a conditional use of a contractor shop. This did go to the Planning Commission and they did recommend approval at their September 10th meeting, and tonight is the second reading here before the council for action.
I have a question. Can the contractor shop be the caretaker residence? So can they live in the contractor shop? Or do they have to build a separate residence, either separately or attached to the contractor shop?
Normally what we see is a residential unit incorporated within the contractor shop. Brandy is online. That's Brandy Hanton, the urban planner. And Brandy, if you could chime in on that, if there's any other stipulations or specifics in regards to how the residence is incorporated with the contractor shop.
Well, this is something we haven't allowed before. It's brand new, right?
Except for in the I district.
Oh, okay.
Yep, this is Brandy. So, and what Heath said is accurate, that typically we do, can you guys hear me? Okay. We typically do ask that it would be a separate unit because they need fire protection. And then, so we work with Chip Primus with the fire department, and he reviews their site plans and architectural plans for that and make sure that it's protected it has the proper fire protection.
And by separated, Brandy, I assume you mean it can be incorporated within the same structure, just needs to have the proper firewall ratings and things of that nature, correct?
Right.
All right, thank you. Councilman Roby?
Thank you, Mayor. Heath, are there any restrictions on number of people? For example, can a family with 8 kids live in this thing? Is there anything that prohibits anything like that?
I don't believe a specific number is called out. It is specific to either be occupied by the owner of the property or the business operation and or an employee of theirs. Brandy, could you chime in, please, as though there's any other specifics to that limitation?
Yep. So, and actually I can read the definition. It's a single family dwelling unit, which will be considered an accessory use to the primary business. The individual residing at this residence must own or be employed by the business. No home occupations will be allowed. So it is just an individual. So they couldn't even have their family there.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak about this item? If so, please state your name for the record. See no one, I will close the public hearing and entertain further council discussion. Councilman Roby, did you have a comment?
Delinquent again.
Oh. Any other comments or questions about it? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item E is approval of resolution number 20-45 for the vacation of a 10-foot alley on the south side of the former County Fair Banquet Hall. And I'll look for a motion on this. Motion by Rademski and a second, someone over here, Councilman Holane. And I will ask Public Works Director Heath Von Eye to tell us about it.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will share my screen, a map reference here that's in the packet. This is the old banquet hall building that used to exist. Has since been demoed, and a new foundation is being constructed here on this property. This red indicates the alley that's in question tonight before the council for vacation. All the adjacent property owners to the south side of the alley and to the north side of the alley have signed the petition to vacate this 10-foot alley. And it's also gone before the Planning Commission on September 28th meeting, and they recommended unanimously to approve the vacate. The city staff also is okay with this vacate. It is a narrow alley. It does have some utility functionality. We would retain a utility easement over the alley. And it's also being requested that the subsequent owners of the property would retain a public access easement over this boundary as well. Reason being, it's anticipated that a drive-up window service will be used within the alley, and so that public access easement helps to accommodate that, along with any foot traffic or pedestrian traffic that may want to come through here in the future. The council recalls there's plans in the works for the downtown park right here directly to the east of this area. That is the gist of this alley vacate request, and we'd be glad to entertain any questions.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak about this item? If so, please state your name for the record. See no one, I will close the public hearing and council may discuss. Anybody have any comments or questions? Councilman Vilhauer.
Just one question, just to clarify that any costs incurred relative to maintaining or improving that alley, that will be borne by the homeowner or the property owners, developers, just to get that cleared up?
Yes, Councilman Vilhauer. So the alley ownership and maintenance would be the responsibility of the future owners upon vacation. Now, as a side note, there are some terms in our current and pending later here tonight development agreement to the property to the north, where there is a small cost share and that could be utilized towards the surfacing of this area.
I am aware of that.
But aside from that, you're correct that the property ownership and maintenance would be in perpetuity the responsibility of the adjacent owners that it'll go back to.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item F is approval of ground lease with the Watertown Motor Company, LLC. And I'll ask the city attorney to introduce this one. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a proposed 25-year lease, renewable for 10 additional years for land at the Watertown Airport to Watertown Motor Company, LLC. On that land, they'll be constructing a private aircraft hangar. The initial rent is $918 per year, and that rate increases at a rate of 2% per annum over the life of the lease. And this lease was recommended for council approval by the airport board at its meeting on September 11th, I believe.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak about this item? If so, please state your name for the record. See no one, I'll close the public hearing and look for a motion. I don't have a motion.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Lallam and a second by Hoyer. And, okay, Councilman Lallam.
Matt, on this one, is that the same terms that we've done as the last several in the past probably year and a half, 2 years?
Yes.
And quick follow-up on that, is there any requirements as far as what they can build and what it has to look like? I probably should have asked that in the past couple of years, but.
Yes, I'd have to pull up the lease here again to refresh my memory, but there is, the lease does designate to the airport manager basically a check off as far as what's being done on the property and that sort of thing. Is there anything you're specifically concerned about?
No, just overall, so that the design of the buildings all look very similar, and we don't have one that's pink and the other one's orange, and so there's some sort of uniformity of some sort in there. Unless it is pink and orange, then that's fine.
I guess I don't believe there is anything specifically to that effect that prevents somebody from painting their hangar pink or orange, but I don't know if that's been an issue. So I'm not sure. If you'd like to address that, we can certainly bring this back for discussion.
We can address that when it comes forward if that's what happens.
Any other questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item G is Tax Increment District number 12. And the first item is approval of resolution number 20-44, adopting the amended boundaries of Tax Increment District number 12 within the city of Watertown, South Dakota. I have a motion by Lallam and a second by Helene. And I'll ask the city attorney, Matt Roby, to explain this, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Tax Increment District 12 was approved by the council, previously approved by the council on April 6th of this year. And it was since discovered that there were some issues with the original legal description. And so what this action is simply to do is to reformalize the plan that now contains the correct legal description. As just a refresher, this is the project across the street to the southeast, and it's going to be a $5.9 million, roughly $5.9 million mixed-use project by developer Jesse Craig, and it's going to generate approximately $1.46 million of tax increment revenue.
Thank you, Matt. All right, do we have any questions about this? Councilman Vilhauer.
I think you've answered it, Matt, but in looking at the agenda, so tonight, we're only acting on the amended boundaries because we actually approved this TIF several months ago, correct?
Yes and no. This the actual start date of this will take effect after this meeting, so it has not been formally approved. It was kind of this was actually caught by the South Dakota Department of Revenue, and they basically advised us to just take it back through the entire process again, and we'll start it after that. So really, you're approving it for all intents and purposes for the first time tonight. But this was previously approved just with an incorrect legal description.
So I guess I'm confused. So are we approving the boundaries, and then we also need a separate action to approve the overall TIF in light of what you just said?
No, you're approving the TIF district as a whole, including the plan, and that includes the boundaries that have already been approved by the Plan Commission.
Okay.
So the resolution makes that more clear if you read through it, that it includes not just the boundary, but the TIF plan.
Okay.
And then the development agreement is handled separately. But those are good questions. Anyone else have questions or comments? All right, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. And part 2 is authorization for the mayor to sign the amended development agreement between the City of Watertown and Parkside Place LLC for tax increment district number 12. Motion by
Second.
Lallam and a second by Hoyer. And Matt, you want to explain this part of it to us, please?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So in the past, I think we've approved these all as one action, but we did separate this out. So the agreement just basically puts into effect the contract into a contract the terms of the TIF plan that was just approved. But the one piece of this that's not included in the TIF plan is that, as previously agreed to by the city, there's language in this agreement that requires the city to reimburse the developer for up to $18,500 for utility improvements and up to $45,500 for sidewalk and alley removal and replacement.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments about this? The development agreement was amended just a little bit. The numbers are the same, though, the contributions. All right, no questions? All those in favor? Oh, sorry.
You know, I don't see those numbers spelled out in the development agreement.
Yeah, they're in there.
They are in there?
Yes. Matt, can you point out what page? I saw them.
Page 4.
On page 4 of the development agreement?
Yeah, part 2.10.
Okay, gotcha. My bad. Thank you.
That's all right. Good that you're looking. I'm glad you're checking. Any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item H is approval of resolution number 20-46, the plat of Prairie Wind Storage First Edition to the municipality of Watertown in the county of Coddington, South Dakota.
So moved.
Motion by Vilhauer, second by Rademski. And I'll ask Public Works Director Heath Von Eyck to explain this.
Thank you, Mayor. Before the council tonight is a fairly straightforward plat being proposed that for the main part coming through conventionally because of a small designation of right-of-way. This otherwise probably could have been handled administratively, but because of a designation of right-of-way, it has to go through the conventional platting process with both boards' approvals. I will pull up a map here shortly. So this is the proposed plat of Prairie Wind Storage First Edition. If you recall, this area just went through some rezoning that was approved for both R1 and CL. And this is the resulting plat that the owners would like to present for approval. Urban Planner Brandy Hanton and myself could help answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Anyone have any questions? Remember talking about this with the rezone, so it's familiar. Councilman Vilhauer?
I do have a question, because the only thing that's been expressed to me since we approved the rezone 2 weeks ago is that access on to South Lake Drive. What becomes of that? I mean, that will remain where it is and be utilized as that development progresses out there?
Yeah, so Councilman Vilhauer, to that point, this essentially becomes part of this Lot 1. And this access essentially would become the private driveway for this residential lot at the point in time in future when this lot develops residentially. So there wouldn't be any public right-of-way here. This would be an extension of this lot, which would really essentially function. It's primarily only function it would have is to serve as a private driveway for the residential development that would occur on Lot 1.
So there would be no use of that in the rest of that plat out there for the storage sheds that are going in. That would all be accessed off 54th Street?
That is correct. The proposed commercial development over in this area of Lot 2 would be accessed off of 54th Street northwest. This, I'll note, is the 7-foot additional public right-of-way that's being dedicated as a function of this plat. There's currently 33 feet from center line, so 66-foot total right-of-way that exists today. And we asked for this additional 7 feet because this is likely going to be a collector in the future based on our transportation master planning. And a collector street requires a minimum of 80-foot right-of-way. So this 7-foot accommodates the west half of the needed right-of-way in the future.
Because the fear was that private drive, as you describe it, was going to end up being used by people having the storage units in the back there, but that is not the case.
So is there something that maybe the city attorney can comment on this that can clarify? This is lot 1 is a single family zoning, right? The commercial zoning is on a different lot. So this is kind of what happened, similar to what happened up in Stony Point, where there was access for a single family lot, which was then purchased by somebody who owned adjoining property, and then the access was contended that it gave access to everything that person owned, not just the original single family lot. So Matt, should we clarify that in a motion, or does it have to be written on the plat?
I don't know the answer to that offhand. I'd have to do some research.
Okay, Councilman Roby. No?
Sorry about that. I gotta quit hurt that button.
Oh, okay. Brandy, you have your hand up. Brandy Hatton, the urban planner.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Could we just specify that in the street access authority certificate on the plat?
You certainly could. It doesn't, I mean, the access is just vague.
Right.
But it could be, sometimes plats have very explicit access that access to lot 1 is via South Lake Drive. And I guess is that lot 2 where the
Correct.
where the units are going? And you could even specify, if that was a concern, that lot 2 shall have no access to South Lake Drive directly through lot 1. Or no, if you wanted to say something like that.
If we can do that, I would like to amend our motion.
I actually prefer plats to be written that way so that this doesn't come up as a mystery. Everybody's gone, there's a new person involved, and the driveway's just granted right over to the units, and nobody expected that, but it's a staff member that didn't see wasn't here when it was platted, So I think that's good to be clear. Do you want to, I think you can just include that in the motion.
Who made the motion?
So let's see. You did.
Oh, I did? Oh, well, then I'll amend the motion to that effect.
Okay, to specify the access on the plat. And Jason, you were the second. Is that good with you too? Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other comments or questions?
Mayor, it's Don.
Okay.
This time my hand's for real.
Okay.
As an owner of Prairie Winds, I should recuse myself from this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Albertson?
I'm just wondering that those 3 lots, how deep are they? I'm thinking about fire trucks and anybody else, garbage trucks and so on.
142
is that
feet.
adequate there to allow them to get in, turn around, get to their issues on that, where it's shown there?
141.48 feet.
Which lot? Are you talking about the single family lot?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's 40 feet wide.
You're talking about the depth on the bigger portion?
Yeah.
That's 141.48 by 300 approximately. Lot
Yeah,
1 is.
so there's plenty of room to build backwards. They got room for the trucks and so on.
Yeah, to that point, Councilman Albertson, the design standards and the subdivision regulations do allow residential lots having access or frontage to a street by way of a private driveway. And then there's subsequent fire code that the fire department would be involved in with any plan review for the development of this lot, just to make sure that that all their apparatus access and mobility is met as well. So that's a good point, and we will note that too for future notes when we review any development on this lot.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item J is consideration of increasing the city contribution toward fill-in and replacement sidewalks. And I put this on myself because we're about to be ordering sidewalks in, which we've done many times in the past. But it's been a while since we increased the city's contribution. For at least back to like 2007, I've been aware of the city contributing toward the construction cost on sidewalks. We formalized that process with a policy in 2011, and then we modified it in 2015. But the contribution has remained at $2 a square foot. And it was $2 a square foot when sidewalk construction was about $4 a square foot. So it was about half in the beginning. And right now, sidewalks are quite a bit more than that. And, you know, it varies from project to project, but it's not uncommon to see $12, $14 a square foot on some sidewalk projects. So they're not all like that. You still see a $5 one here and there, and but there's removal involved too. So I'm suggesting that we increase the contribution up to and double it to $4 a square foot. I think that would really help people who get their sidewalks ordered in. And if you have specific questions about individual projects or data lately on how much projects cost, you'd have to ask Heath that, but he probably has it at his fingertips. Councilman Lallam?
Quick question on that. So we're looking at doing this for anyone that's
Anybody.
we're ordering it in, whether it's replacement
Not
or
even just ordering it in. I'm suggesting it because we're about to.
Okay.
But the policy applies to anybody that's fixing their sidewalk that needs repair, or that has fill-in sidewalk that wasn't ordered. Like now, when you build a house, you're required to put your sidewalk in.
Yep.
And if that was part of your development agreement, which we have on new developments, no, you don't get a cost share. That's a cost that the developer is supposed to bear.
Sure.
And he passes it or she on to the homeowner that develops there. So it wouldn't apply to that. But in the older neighborhoods, we didn't have these agreements in place. And so we do have gaps in our sidewalk. And if someone wants to fill that gap, we want to help them because that's a benefit to everybody. So that's the purpose of it. The policy wouldn't change. It's except for the price, and that's in the council packet. Tells when and what we contribute to. So those little sidewalks that go from the curb to the main sidewalk, we don't cost share on that. We're just talking about the sidewalk that's in the public right of way that's, you know, going from one across the frontage of a lot.
Quick question I got. How much of that 16,000 is being utilized now?
So, Councilman Lallam, on average, the city engineering office holds back about $20,000 of our sidewalk replacement budget annually, and depending on the year, we've issued anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 worth of reimbursements. So the average is about that $16,000 that's getting utilized by the residents.
So it is actually utilized then?
Exactly.
Okay.
And one point of clarity is this is intended for residential property. It's specific to that. This reimbursement program is specific to residential property.
Okay. I make the motion to approve that.
All right, thank you. I have a motion by Lallam and a second by Rademski. Is there any further questions or comments?
Just
Councilman
to
Villar?
clarify, as an example, the 10th Avenue project where sidewalks need to go in would be covered by this? then?
Yes, yes, absolutely, because some of these sidewalks, the people have to repair, they have to pay for that part that doesn't meet ADA, and other people don't even have it in, and it will be ordered in, so, great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item K is approval of revisions to Watertown's fine and bond schedule, accounting for recent increase in liquidated costs statutorily addressed to ordinance violations, assessed, excuse me, not. Yeah. So I have a motion by Lallam and a second by Vilhauer, and I'll let the city attorney explain this.
Thanks, Mayor. Essentially what this schedule is a list of ordinance violations that are routinely issued by the police department. And after approval, if the council approves this evening, it'll be sent off to the presiding judge of the Third Circuit to approve. And the reason it's here in front of you this evening is because the legislature recently added $10 to the costs that we need to collect every time there's an ordinance violation. So it went up from $62.50 to $72.50. So the council, I believe, approved this last year, 2 years ago, was the last time it was approved. Same violations are on there, same fine amounts. The only difference is an increase in court costs.
All right, thank you. Is there any question or comment? Councilman Lallam?
So we're basically just following the legislature's guidance on this, correct?
On the court cost piece of it is indicated by statute. The fines are chosen by the city, and so that's been something that's been standard over the years. The chief of police essentially weighs in heavily on these amounts, and that's how they get set.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Vilhar?
But just to clarify, okay, so we can, or the chief of police can weigh in as far as recommending the fine amount. I thought that was set by the courts, but I must be mistaken on that.
So yeah, the fine amounts. So I guess there's two pieces to this. Statute allows cities to charge up to $500 and 30 days in jail for a violation of city ordinance. Currently, our ordinance only allows up to $200. And so within that $200, these are tickets that are routinely issued. And so rather than having to have everybody appear in court for a speeding ticket, for example, they can just send in this amount. And so that amount includes the fine as well as the court costs. If you issued a citation, or if you're issued a complaint for a violation of another type of city ordinance that's not on this list, a court appearance is required. So essentially, anything not on this list, a court appearance is required. But to answer your question on the fine amounts, we have discretion up to the statutory limit of $500.
Okay, thank you. But then those funds that are collected get remitted to the state treasurer then, correct?
No, the fine comes to the city.
The cost goes to the treasurer, though.
The cost goes to the state and gets distributed.
Okay.
According to those statutes. The fine comes to the city.
Okay.
So we're not changing any of the fines. Those are all the same. It's just the court cost part that went up. True?
Correct.
Okay. Councilman Rademski?
You want to adjust our fines then to keep the retention of that revenue?
I guess we could.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well, the court costs went up for all this, so do we want to adjust our fines by $10 per fine to?
That's what, the cost is adjusted. It was $62.50. Now it's $72.50 to cover that cost.
Yeah, so so previously, so let's take a speeding ticket, for example. If the speeding ticket was $110, currently it's 100, if you get a speeding ticket, it's $172.50. 110 of that is a fine, $62.50 is court costs. Now that cost will be $182.50 rather than $172.50. The fine amount's the same, the court costs have gone up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions or comments?
Things we learned.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. All right, the next item on the agenda is old business. Do we have any old business?
Mayor?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify one thing that Councilman Lallam asked about the, where'd it go? The airport lease. And I just wanted to get that specific language. So there is language in there. It doesn't talk about specific colors or construction or anything like that, but it is subject to the approval of the airport manager. It does specifically call out color. That is subject to approval of the airport manager, and the designs also need to be submitted to the FAA prior to construction.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, good catch. Any other old business? Is there any new business? Any liaison member reports?
Mayor,
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Matt Roby.
sorry, I have new business. I apologize. I just wanted to follow up on one more piece that Heath brought up during the discussion from the liquor license transfer. I just wanted to get a little bit more quick discussion on whether the council is interested in pursuing that idea. So just a brief history. At some point, the legislature allowed cities to adopt these special event licenses, and they're special event licenses for beer and wine and liquor. Well, the city, for whatever reason, when we first adopted those licenses, chose not to adopt the special event liquor license. And so it's something that it's out there, it's available for cities, but at some point in the past, the city chose not to adopt that. And I assume it had something to do with the incumbent liquor license holders, because currently, if an event, a charitable event of some sort wants to serve liquor, they need to basically patronize a bar or current liquor license holder, transfer the license of them, and then transfer it back like you see regularly. If a council chose to adopt that special event liquor license, you wouldn't have to go to a current license holder. Boys and Girls Club, for example, can just come apply for that special event license outright and not include a current license holder. So if the council is interested in that, we can bring that forward. I just wanted to kind of just see if that's something that you want to be brought forward.
Aha. What do you think? I've seen some thumbs up. Any thumbs down? Okay, we're going to bring it up. Councilman Lallam?
The only thing on that, I'd like to know, like, some of the logistics as far as insurance and what the liabilities are for anyone that does that. I mean, obviously, typically, you gotta have insurance on whatever event you're gonna have, but, does that fall to the liquor license owner or the person that goes to apply? So those will be part of the discussion, Matt, going forward.
Sounds good.
Very good. Councilman Rademski?
This is probably old business, but I don't see on the current agenda the resolution to 20-15.
Oh.
The continuing necessity of the pandemic outbreak of novel coronavirus.
That is an oversight. We meant to have that on there. We've been having that on every meeting agenda. Right, Matt? I think it needs to be on there. Are you thinking we should be modifying anything?
No, I was just wondering if, if we had done something that we weren't aware of.
I think
as to
it
why
was just
wasn't
an
on the
oversight.
agenda. Okay.
And unless it expired after a certain number of months.
It does not.
Yeah. So we just missed that. Does anybody think that we should be modifying anything? Okay. Good catch, Jason.
Mayor, to that point, though, Can you give us an update from what the Unified Command Team, because you've been meeting on a regular basis now again,
Yeah.
that you can report or that should be reported to the public and to us as council members, what's been going on there?
Well, the Unified Command Team is still not ready to give any numbers or triggering points based on number of cases or even number of people in the hospital that would trigger any kind of a change. But there has been a change. The hospital and staff is very taxed. Like most organizations, they have people out with COVID. They've been shorthanded. When you go out with COVID, you're gone for a long time. And if you're having to go on quarantine because of an exposure, it's putting a strain on the staff. So we may have plenty of hospital beds. We just don't have plenty of healthcare workers to take care of the people in the beds. Right now, we don't have a problem, but that has reached a point where the Unified Command Team wants to reiterate that we should all be wearing masks whenever we're in proximity with other people. And the incident commanders have agreed to do that. That's why I'm wearing a mask today. I have made a commitment to wear one whenever I'm, and we're maybe 6 feet apart, but we've been sitting here since 4 o'clock and it is now almost 8. So 4 hours of maybe 7 feet apart. I don't know. I don't know what the science says. I'm erring on the side of caution, and that's what the Unified Command Team is asking our whole community to do. Not that it's going to stop anyone from getting sick, but it might prevent or lessen the seriousness, might prevent a hospitalization, could completely prevent an illness. We don't know, but it certainly won't hurt. So they're asking everyone to be vigilant about their efforts so that we don't get to the point where our hospital staff cannot keep up with the number of people needing their attention. And we do have, we hit the 1,000 threshold in our county. We now have had 1,001 cases of COVID in Cottington County and 7 deaths. Currently 198 active cases, which is very high but not a record. And active in our region, 443 at this time, which is very high, but not a record. So, Councilman Lallam?
And to that point, the school district is actually expecting kids to wear masks now. So they changed that from recommended to expecting.
Yeah. All right. Any other announcements? Councilman Vilhar?
I do have one. I had a unique opportunity here that I would encourage my colleagues up here to take advantage of. And I think, Don Roby, you may have done this in the past. I had a 4-hour ride along with one of our police department personnel a week ago Friday night. Very enlightening experience. In fact, I got involved in or shouldn't say involved, but tagged along on a drug arrest. And saw how that individual got processed. So anyway, I want to thank the police department for that opportunity and encourage any of you that may be so inclined to do so at some point, because it is an eye-opening experience.
Thank you. Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. As airport board liaison, I feel the need to say something, but I'm going to pass it off to someone who can say it better.
No pressure there, right? Thank you, Councilman Holing. So we've got the grant in process to be formally awarded to the city yet for the terminal. And in case anybody's wondering what the lag time is there or what the expectation is, we did not have that grant award in hand yet, but through the airport manager's discussion with the FAA and phone conversations that he and I have had with the FAA, they're shooting and hopeful and planning to get that awarded to us by October 19th. That's not a hard, fast, committed date. That's just what they verbally expressed to us. What we've ran into is in mid to late September, the FAA's fiscal year ends, and our recent tentative bid award for the new terminal, which included a change order to include a bunch of apron work so we could maximize our grant amount, that pushed our submittal in right to the end timeline for this previous fiscal year. It didn't quite make it in time for them to process everything in this fiscal year, And their system's literally shut down and they can't process any further until October 13th. That's when the FAA's new fiscal year starts, is on October 13th. And the regional FAA manager has verbally committed to us to get ours turned around as soon as possible once the new fiscal system is up and running. So we hope to have that in hand by October 19th or very soon thereafter. And that's kind of where we're at in the timeline. We had hoped to have it in hand by now, but it didn't work out. So the money's got our name on it. We've been assured it's got the city of Watertown's name on it. It's just a matter of processing. So it's in the works.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have an announcement? Okay, we will have an executive session this evening in order to discuss and consult with legal counsel on contractual matters and as well as some economic development, confidential financial information. We do not expect to take action upon coming out. So I need a motion to go in. A motion by Vilhauer and a second by Y. Any discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. Wow.
That's 'cause Ben.
Yeah, okay, that was Lallam and seconded by Y. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. We are in executive session.